The space station Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness between stars. It was a place where many species came to trade, to talk, and sometimes to hide. Humans had only been allowed here for 2 years, and they were still learning the rules of a galaxy that had existed long before them. Walked through the lower decks of the station. These were the forgotten places where the lights flickered and the air smelled of rust and old machinery. She was not supposed to be here. The human quarters were 3 levels above, clean and bright and safe, but had never been good at staying where she was supposed to be. She was 34 years old with tired eyes and hands that were always busy. Back on Earth, she had been a biomedical engineer. She built things that helped people see, hear, and move. But her greatest project had never been finished. A visor that could give sight to the blind. She had started building it for her younger brother, who had been born without sight. He died before she could complete it. That was 6 years ago. She still carried the unfinished designs everywhere she went. The sound of crying stopped her. It was soft, like a small animal trying not to be heard. Followed it around a corner and found a child sitting against the wall. The child was not human. She was one of the tall, pale species with silver skin and large eyes. But this child's eyes were clouded white. She was blind. Knew about thee and their beliefs. Her friend had explained it to her many times, the god called the god of light. They believed that sight was a holy gift. Those born without it were cursed. They called them the ones and treated them worse than animals. They could not go to school. They could not enter temples. Their own families threw them away. The girl could not have been older than 12 in human years. Her clothes were torn. Her silver skin was dirty. She was alone. "Hello," said softly. The girl stopped crying. Her head turned toward the sound, but her white eyes saw nothing. "Please," she whispered in broken common, the trading language of the galaxy. "I am not stealing. I am just sitting. I will go." "You do not have to go," said. She sat down on the cold floor a few feet away from the child. "What is your name?" The girl was quiet for a long time. "Lyra," she finally said. "But names do not matter for ones like me." "Names always matter," said. "I am." Over the next few weeks, returned to the lower decks every day. She brought food, water, and warm blankets. She learned that Lyra had been abandoned on the station by her own parents when she was 7. She had survived by begging and hiding. The on the station ignored her because looking at a cursed child was considered bad luck. She was a ghost in her own world. Found out what was doing and came to warn her. "This is dangerous," he said. He was a kind man but careful. His job was to help humans and aliens understand each other, and he knew how easily things could go wrong. They have laws about their cursed ones. If their priests find out you are helping her, they will call it interference. There could be a diplomatic incident. "She is a child," said. "She is hungry and alone and scared. What am I supposed to do? Walk away?" "Yes," said sadly. "That is exactly what we are supposed to do. We are guests here. We do not make the rules." Shook her head. "Then the rules are wrong." She could not stop thinking about. He had been so smart, so funny, so full of life. But he had also been treated as less than whole by people who did not understand. Doctors who spoke about him like he was not in the room. Strangers who looked at him with pity or disgust. He had died in an accident, falling down stairs he could not see. Had always believed she could have saved him if she had just worked faster, finished the visor sooner. She could not save, but maybe she could save Lyra. Late at night, in her small workshop, pulled out her old designs. The neuroloptical visor. It worked by sending signals directly to the brain, bypassing damaged eyes completely. She had built prototypes for human brains, but never finished testing them. Now she began to wonder if she could modify the design for biology. It was a crazy idea. She did not have the right equipment. She did not have permission. She did not even know if brains worked the same way as human brains. But she had access to the station's medical database and, despite his warnings, quietly helped her find the files she needed. "If anyone asks," he said, I do not know anything about this. Smiled, thank you. She worked every night while the station slept. She studied anatomy. She adjusted her designs. She tested circuits and rewrote code. And every day she visited Lyra in the lower decks, teaching her human words, singing her human songs, telling her stories about Earth. Lyra began to smile. It was small at first, just a tiny curve of her lips, but it grew. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows. Elder Priest had heard rumors about the human woman who visited the cursed child. He stood in the darkness, his golden robes hidden under a plain cloak, and he watched with cold, calculating eyes. The human was meddling in things she did not understand, and would make sure she learned the price of such foolishness. Had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes burned and her hands shook, but she could not stop. The visor was almost ready. It sat on her workbench, a delicate thing of metal and light, smaller than her palm. Wires thin as spider silk connected to soft pads that would touch the skin behind the ears. When activated, it would send images directly into the brain. She had tested it on herself first. She had closed her eyes and put on the visor, and for a moment she had seen the world in strange new colors, sharper and brighter than normal vision. It worked on human brains, but brains were different. The neural pathways were similar but not the same. She had adjusted the frequency, rewritten the translation algorithms, and prayed to whatever might be listening that she had not made a mistake. Came to her workshop that night. He looked at the visor and then at its exhausted face. "You are going to do it," he said. It was not a question. "Tonight," said, "I cannot wait any longer. The priests are getting suspicious, has been asking questions about me. If this goes wrong, they will send you home, or worse. And if I do nothing, Lyra spends the rest of her life in darkness." Picked up the visor carefully. "I have to try." Was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. "I will come with you. Someone should watch the corridors." They made their way down to the lower decks together. The station was quiet at this hour, most of its inhabitants asleep. His heart beat so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She found Lyra in her usual hiding spot, a small space behind some old cargo containers. The girl was curled up under the blanket had given her. Lyra whispered, "Wake up, I have something for you." Lyra sat up slowly, her clouded eyes turned towards voice. "What is it?" "Something I have been building, for you." Knelt beside her and took her small, cold hands. "Lyra, I need you to trust me. I am going to put something on your head. It might feel strange, but I think it will let you see." Lyra's breath caught. "See, but took the light from me. The priests say it can never come back." "The priests are wrong," said firmly. "You are not anything. Your eyes just work differently, and I have built something that can help." She could feel Lyra trembling. The girl had been told her whole life that she was broken, cursed, unworthy of light. And now a strange human woman was telling her that everything she had been taught was a lie. "I am scared," Lyra whispered. "I know," said. "I am scared too, but I am right here. I will not leave you." Slowly, gently, placed the visor over Lyra's eyes. She adjusted the pads behind her ears, making sure the neural contacts were positioned correctly. Then she took a deep breath and activated the device. Nothing happened. Stomach dropped. She checked the connections, checked the power levels. Everything looked right, but Lyra sat perfectly still, her face blank. "Lyra, can you hear me?" "Yes," Lyra said. Her voice was strange, distant. I see something, but it is confusing, just shapes, moving shapes." "That is normal," said quickly. "Your brain has never processed visual information before. It needs time to learn. Focus on my voice. Try to find the shape that is making the sound." Lyra turned her head slowly. Her hands reached out, trembling, and then her fingers touched his face. "This shape," Lyra said, "this is you." "Yes," said, tears building in her eyes, "that is me." "You are warm, the shape is warm," Lyra's voice cracked. "There are colors, I do not know what colors are, but there are so many of them." For the next hour sat with Lyra as the girl's brain slowly learned to see. It was not perfect vision. The visor could not give her natural sight, but it gave her something. Shapes became clearer. Colors began to make sense. Lyra looked at her own hands and cried. She looked at the lights on the ceiling and laughed. She looked at its face and could not look away. "You have spots on your skin," Lyra said. "Small brown spots." "Freckles," said, wiping her own tears. "They are called freckles." "Freckles," Lyra repeated. "They are beautiful." Neither of them heard the footsteps approaching. Neither of them saw the young male standing in the shadows, watching with wide, horrified eyes. Was 19 years old and had served the temple since he was a child. He was an acolyte, training to become a priest. He had come to the lower decks because he sometimes brought food to the cursed ones in secret. It was a sin, he knew, but he could not help himself. Something in his heart had always questioned the teachings. Now he stood frozen, watching the impossible. A cursed child was seeing. A human woman had given her sight. Everything he had been taught said this could not happen. The ones were by himself. No mortal power could undo divine judgment. But here was a girl, looking at her own hands and crying with joy. His world cracked open. His faith, his certainty, his whole understanding of the universe shifted beneath his feet. He stumbled backward, knocking into a container. And Lyra both turned toward the sound, but was already running, his robes flying behind him, his mind screaming with questions that had no answers. He did not know where he was going. He only knew that everything had changed. And he could not keep this secret. The news spread like fire through dry grass. Within 2 days, every on Harmony's Edge had heard the story. A human woman had given sight to a cursed child. Some said it was a trick, a human illusion designed to mock their faith. Others whispered that it might be true, and if it was true, then what did that mean about everything they believed? Elder Priest worked quickly. He called an emergency meeting of the council on the station. He demanded answers from the human authorities. He declared that the child, Lyra, must be brought to the temple for examination. The word examination sounded gentle, but everyone knew what it really meant. Captain was the highest-ranking human military officer on the station. She was 45 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and a face that had seen too many conflicts. When she heard what had done, she closed her eyes and pressed her fingers against her forehead. "You gave sight to an alien child," she said slowly. "An alien child whose entire religion is built around the idea that blindness is a divine punishment. And you did this without permission, without oversight, without any consideration for the political consequences." Stood before her, refusing to look away. "Yes." "Do you understand what you have done? The control 17 star systems. Their fleet is 3 times the size of ours. We have been trying to build peaceful relations with them for years, and you have just told them that their God is a lie." "I told them nothing," said. "I just helped a little girl see." "That is the same thing, and you know it." Ambassador arrived within the hour. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a voice like calm water. She had spent 30 years preventing wars between species who did not understand each other. She looked at with a mixture of frustration and something that might have been respect. "Elder is demanding your arrest," she said. "He calls it spiritual terrorism. He wants the visor destroyed and the child handed over to temple authority." "No," said immediately, "they will kill her." "I know," turned to Captain. "We cannot hand over a child to be executed, but we also cannot start a war over one person." "Then what do we do?" asked. Before anyone could answer, the holographic display in the center of the room flickered to life. A figure appeared, tall and ancient, wrapped in robes of pure white and gold. High Prelate, the supreme religious leader of all, was speaking directly to them from the. His voice was cold and deep, like stone grinding against stone. "Humans," he said, "you have been guests in our space. You have been given the privilege of trading with us, speaking with us, learning from us. And this is how you repay our generosity, by mocking our faith, by corrupting our children with your blasphemous machines. Stepped forward. High Prelate, we meant no disrespect. This was the action of one individual, not a statement from humanity as a whole. We are willing to discuss. There is nothing to discuss, interrupted. The cursed are cursed by will. No machine can undo divine judgment. What your engineer has created is an illusion, a deception designed to spread doubt among the faithful. You will surrender the human called. You will surrender the device. And you will surrender the abomination who wears it. If you refuse, you will face the consequences of defying will. The hologram flickered and died. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Captain straightened her shoulders. I will not hand over a child to be killed. I will not hand over one of my people to be punished for an act of kindness. The human quarters are now under lockdown. No authority enters without my permission. Nodded slowly. I will try to buy us time, but you need to understand what this means. If they send ships, we cannot win. I know, said, but some things are worth fighting for. In another part of the station was falling apart. He had not slept since witnessing Lyra's sight. He had not eaten. He wandered through the corridors like a ghost, his mind repeating the same questions over and over. How could a machine do what could not? How could a human accomplish what the priest said was impossible? Either the human had power greater than God, or God had never been real at all. He found himself standing outside the temple, unable to enter. His whole life he had believed. He had served. He had looked at the cursed ones with pity and acceptance, telling himself that their suffering was divine will. Now he felt sick with shame. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned and saw Sister, an old nun who had served the temple for 60 years. Her face was wrinkled and tired, but her eyes were kind. You saw it, she said quietly, the girl with the visor. Nodded, unable to speak. Come with me, said. There are others who need to hear what you witnessed. She led him to a small room deep in the station, where a dozen young sat waiting. They were acolytes like him, temple servants, faithful believers who had begun to doubt. Closed the door behind them. Tell them, she said tell them what you saw. And with trembling voice told them everything. The girl, the visor, the sight, the joy. By the time he finished, some were weeping. Others looked terrified, but all of them understood that the world they knew was ending. Made a decision. He borrowed a recording device and spoke into it, describing everything he had witnessed. Then he broadcast the message across every network on the station. I saw it, his voice said, reaching thousands of ears. She sees. The light was never, it was stolen from us by those who claimed to speak for God. Within hours, the fleet began to move. But so did something else, something the High Prelate had not expected. Across space, the whispers began. The doubts spread. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the faithful began to question. The first warships arrived at Harmony's Edge 3 days after its broadcast. They were massive vessels, built for war, armed with weapons that could tear through station walls like paper. They surrounded the station and waited, their presence a silent threat. But they did not attack. Inside the station, something strange was happening. The population was splitting. Some stood with Elder, demanding that the humans be punished and the natural order restored. Others, many of them young, gathered around and asked questions that had never been asked before. Why were the blind cursed? Who decided this? What if it was all a lie? Watched the growing conflict from the human quarters, where she and Lyra were hidden. Brought them news every few hours, his face growing more worried each time. The fleet is getting bigger, he said, but they are not all here to attack. Some of the ships are refusing to follow the High Prelate's orders. There are reports of fighting on 3 different colonies. Fighting between who? Asked. Believers and doubters. His message did more than anyone expected. It gave voice to people who had been afraid to speak for generations. Sat down heavily. There are families of blind children who are demanding answers. There are scholars who found old texts that contradict the official teachings. It is chaos. Lyra sat quietly in the corner, her visor glowing softly. She had learned so much in just a few days. She knew colors now, could name shapes, could recognize faces. But she also understood what her sight meant for her people. She understood that her existence was tearing the galaxy apart. "This is my fault," she said softly. "No," said firmly. She knelt beside the girl and took her hands. "This is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. The people who lied, the people who hurt children like you for thousands of years, they are the ones who caused this. You just existed. That is all." Admiral arrived with the human fleet 2 days later. He was an old man, from a dozen wars he had hoped would be the last. He looked at the situation around Harmony's edge and shook his head slowly. "This is not our fight," he told Captain through the communication channel. "This is a religious matter. We should evacuate our people and leave." "We cannot leave," said. "If we abandon the station now, the temple loyalists will kill everyone who supported the doubters. They will kill the blind children who are coming here hopping for help. They will kill Lyra." Was quiet for a long moment. "You are asking me to commit our forces to a war based on faith and truth, a war we did not start and cannot win." "I am asking you to protect innocent people," said. "That is what we do. That is what humans have always done." The Admiral sighed. Then he gave the order. The human fleet moved into defensive position around the station. They would not attack, but they would not leave either. Sister came to that night. The old nun looked exhausted, as if she had not slept in weeks. She carried a data tablet in her trembling hands. "I need to tell you something," said. "Something I have kept secret for 60 years." She sat down and began to speak. Long ago, when she was young, she had discovered ancient texts hidden in the deepest temple archives, texts that told a different story about thee and their blind ones. According to these writings, blindness was not a curse from it all. It was a genetic condition, introduced artificially thousands of years ago by the ruling class. They had created the blind to be a servant caste, a population that could be controlled through faith and fear. The religion was built to justify it, said, tears running down her face. Every prayer, every ritual, every teaching about light was designed to make people accept the unacceptable. And I knew. I found the truth when I was 20 years old, but I was afraid. So I stayed silent and I watched children suffer and I told myself there was nothing I could do. Listened in horror. The scale of the lie was almost too large to comprehend. Generations of suffering, millions of lives destroyed, families torn apart, children abandoned to die, all because of a lie created to maintain power. "Why are you telling me this now?" asked. "Because you did what I could not," said. "You saw wrong and you acted. You did not care about politics or consequences. You just helped a child." She held out the data tablet. "This contains copies of the ancient texts, the proof. I am going to release it publicly. The whole galaxy will know the truth." "They will kill you," said. Smiled sadly. "I am old. I have lived with guilt long enough. It is time for me to finally do what is right." The next morning's message went out across every network. The ancient texts, the proof of the conspiracy, the truth about the blind. It spread faster than anyone expected. Crowds gathered outside the temple, demanding answers. On colonies across the empire, blind children were being brought out of hiding by families who finally understood they had done nothing wrong. High Prelate appeared on every screen, calling for calm, calling for faith, calling for the destruction of the human lies. But his words fell on deaf ears. The truth was too big to contain. The warships around Harmony's edge turned on each other. Shots were fired, not at humans but between factions. The civil war had begun. Admiral opened a channel to all ships in the area. "To any vessel or individual seeking asylum, the human fleet will provide protection. Come to Harmony's edge. We will keep you safe." Thousands accepted. Ships carrying families, scholars, children all fled toward the station. The humans guided them in, protected them, gave them shelter. And High Prelate, watching his empire crumble, gave one final order: a holy purge. Every doubter, every blind child, every traitor to light must be cleansed. The war for truth had become a war for survival. 6 months had passed since the first shot was fired between ships. The galaxy looked different now. The Empire, which had stood united for 10,000 years, had broken into pieces. The remained under Temple control, surrounded by walls of warships, isolated from the rest of the universe. But 37 colonies had declared independence. They called themselves the Seeing, and they had built a new society based on truth instead of lies. Harmony's Edge had become something new. What was once a small trading station was now the largest refugee center in the sector. Ships arrived every day carrying families who had fled the Temple's purge. Blind children walked openly through the corridors, wearing visors that her team had built. They could see. They could learn. They could live. Stood in her workshop, which had grown from a small room to an entire deck of the station. She had trained 47 engineers to build visors. They worked day and night, producing devices as fast as they could, trying to meet the endless demand. Every visor they made was a small revolution. Every child who opened their eyes for the first time was proof that the old world was gone. Lyra came to find her as she did every afternoon. The girl was 13 now, taller than before, stronger than before. She wore her visor always, the device that had started everything. She had become famous across the galaxy, an icon of the revolution, but she did not like the attention. She preferred to help in the workshop, sorting parts, testing circuits, doing small tasks that kept her busy. "There is a message from," Lyra said. "He says the negotiations are going well. 3 more colonies will join the Seeing by the end of the month." Smiled, had changed so much since that night in the lower decks. The young acolyte who had run away in fear was now one of the leaders of the reform movement. He worked alongside, building bridges between humans and helping both sides understand each other. He had found purpose in his doubt, strength in his questions. "Good," said, "that is good news." Sister had not lived to see any of this. The Temple had declared her a heretic and a traitor. She had been captured during the first weeks of the war and executed publicly, her death broadcast as a warning to others. But her message had already spread too far. Her confession, her truth, her final act of courage had changed everything. Thought about her often. She thought about the 60 years of silence, the guilt that had eaten away at the old nun's soul. She thought about how had finally found the strength to speak, and how that strength had cost her everything. The Temple still stood. High Prelate still ruled, surrounded by the faithful who refused to believe the truth. He called the Seeing heretics and traitors. He promised that would punish them all, but his power was shrinking every day. Ships left his fleet to join the rebels. Priests abandoned their robes and walked away from temples that suddenly felt like prisons. The lie was dying, one believer at a time. Came to the workshop that evening with a bottle of something he called celebration wine from Earth. He had been working nonstop for months, translating documents, arranging meetings, explaining human customs to confused refugees. He looked tired but happy. "I have news," he said. "The Human Council has officially recognized the Seeing as an independent government. Full diplomatic relations, trade agreements, everything." Took the bottle and laughed. "That is wonderful. It gets better. They want to name the first embassy after you, the Center for Species Relations." "Absolutely not," said immediately. "I did not do this for fame or recognition. I did it because it was right." Smiled. "I know. That is why I already told them to call it the Lyra Center instead." Lyra, who had been listening from across the room, looked up in surprise. "What? No, I do not want that either." "Too late," said cheerfully. "The paperwork is already filed." Later that night, when the station was quiet and most of its inhabitants were asleep, sat on an observation deck with Lyra. Through the great windows, they could see ships coming and going, carrying refugees and supplies and hope. Stars burned in the distance, cold and ancient, unchanged by the small wars of small creatures. "Can I ask you something?" Lyra said. "Of course." "Why did you help me? That first night when you found me in the lower decks. You did not know me. I was nothing to you, just a dirty, blind alien child. Why did you care?" Was quiet for a long time. She thought about his laugh, about the way he would hold her hand when they walked together. She thought about the guilt she had carried for years, the feeling that she had failed him, that she should have worked faster, tried harder, saved him. "I had a brother," she finally said. "He was born blind like you. On Earth, we do not believe that blindness is a curse, but many people still treated him badly. They thought he was less than them, less smart, less capable, less human." She paused, gathering her words. "He died when I was 28, an accident. I always believed I could have saved him if I had finished the Visor sooner. For 6 years, I carried that guilt everywhere I went." Lyra was quiet, listening. "When I found you," continued, "I saw him. I saw every child who was ever told they were broken, cursed, worthless. And I decided that I would not walk away again. I would not stay silent. I would help, even if it cost me everything." She looked at Lyra and smiled. "You deserve to see. You deserve to know that there is nothing wrong with you, that you are not anything, that you are whole exactly as you are." Lyra took her hand. Her small fingers were warm against palm. "Humans are strange," Lyra said. "You break things, but you also fix them." Laughed softly. "We are working on the balance." They sat together in the starlight, human and mother and daughter in every way that mattered. Behind them, a galaxy was changing. Old lies were dying. New truths were being born. And somewhere in a workshop full of parts and wires and hope, another Visor was being built for another child who deserved to see. The war was not over. It might never be truly over. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. There was family. There was light. And that was enough.